Despite women making up nearly half of India's population, they have been underrepresented in political position, often holding only 14 to 15% of the seats in various legislative bodies in the country. The 106th Constitutional Amendment Act passed in 2023 is a big step for women's reservation in India. However, its actual implementation won't begin until after the next national census, which could mean that we wait until at least 2029 to see the results of this legislative change. While this amendment is a significant step forward, it does face some criticism for not including specific quotas for other backward classes and Muslim women. Now, what does this amendment aim to achieve? The 106th Constitutional Amendment Act passed in 2023 is a big step for women's reservation in India. It sets aside 1/3 of the seats in the Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies, especially for women. This change aims to tackle the historical imbalances in women's political representation in the country, aligning with the principles of equality and affirmative action found in the Constitution. Despite women making up nearly half of India's population, they have been underrepresented in political position, often holding only 14 to 15% of the seats in various legislative bodies in the country. This amendment builds on previous efforts of 1993 that reserved 1/3 of the seats for women in local institutions when it comes to local governance. The bill was introduced in the Lok Sabha in September 19, 2023 and passed with a lot of support from within the parliament. It modifies existing laws to ensure that women have a significant voice in politics, even covering reserved seats for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. However, its actual implementation won't begin until after the next national census, which could mean that we wait until at least 2029 to see the results of this legislative change. Many people are also concerned about the lack of specific quotas other than ST/STs. For example, quotas for backward classes and quotas for Muslim women, prompting some amount of criticism from various political groups. Although this amendment is historic, its success relies heavily on how well we put it into practice and whether it truly includes everyone. The journey towards this amendment hasn't been easy. The first substantial effort for women's reservation in parliament dates back to 1996 with the introduction of the 81st Constitutional Amendment Bill. But unfortunately, it fell through due to lack of demarcated sub-quota reservations. Other attempts in subsequent years also faced challenges and did not go through. There have been some important court rulings supporting women's reservation. Like for example, in the Rajesh Kumar case, when the Supreme Court declared that local government for reservation for women to be a perfectly valid exercise within the constitutional framework. These legal milestones played a significant role in supporting the passage of the 106th Amendment to the Constitution. Now, what does this amendment aim to achieve? The aim of the 106th Amendment is to ensure gender equality by guaranteeing at least 1/3 of the seats in our legislative bodies to women, both in the Lok Sabha and various state assemblies. This amendment is a way to correct the historical imbalances and to give women a stronger role in shaping laws and policies of our country. By also including scheduled class and scheduled tribe candidates within this matrix, it promotes representation for marginalized communities and particularly women of marginalized communities, which is crucial for inclusive governance. One interesting aspect of the amendment is that the reserved seats will rotate after each delimitation exercise, a move that prevents stagnation and encourages a diverse pool of female leaders to get into the political process. Reservations are set to last for an initial period of 15 years, allowing sufficient time for reviews and possible extensions. But again, all of this hinges on the next census. So as we said, we might have to wait till 2029 at least to see tangible results. Whilst this amendment is a significant step forward, it does face some criticism for not including specific quotas for other backward classes and Muslim women. Many believe that affirmative action should address intersecting identities rather than providing a one-size-fits-all solution. The 106th Amendment builds on the previous amendments, such as the 73rd and the 74th Amendment, which successfully introduced women's reservation at the regional grassroots level. These earlier changes led to a higher number of females participating in local self-governance, and now the push is also to extend those benefits at the state and national levels. The amendment signals India's dedication to promoting gender equality in its democratic institutions. However, the fact that implementation will be delayed after a census has raised some eyebrows. Critics argue that these changes should happen immediately rather than wait for the administrative processes to complete. Additionally, the rotation of reserved constituencies may impact local development and may impact the continuity of representation, which is another topic of debate. Now, are these comparable to other global developments? When looking at global gender representation in legislatures, it is clear that different countries have taken varied approaches to getting more women involved in the political process. For example, countries such as Sweden, which has 46% of all lawmakers being women, South Africa, which has 45% women representation in legislatures, and France, which has 38% of all lawmakers being women, certainly have a higher female representation without the mandatory quota being applied. They rely instead on voluntary party quota systems. Meanwhile, nations such as Bangladesh, which has 21% female legislators, Brazil, which has 18% female legislators, have implemented legislative quotas, but their effectiveness is often limited due to issues with enforcement. In the United States of America, where there isn't a mandatory quota for reservation for women in legislative bodies, women's representation in Congress is astonishingly low, showing that having quotas is just one part of the solution, but strong institutional support and commitments from political parties are also essential for sustained gender inclusion.